Tsukasa Teira is an attention-seeking brain-dead loser living a normal college girl life until the day she learns about the existence of the vampires when a police officer Anze arrests her friend for drinking human blood. Anze turns out to be a vampire as well, and she starts to develop the hots for him even though vampires and humans cannot be together. However, before any of this, on a bright full moon night, a man falls on the ground covered in blood and several other people run past him in a rush. A man watches them go in tears and then runs after them. He beats each one of them, and when they are all down, he once again starts crying and groaning in pain. His fangs come out and one of them brings out a knife, so he lunges at him and tears his arm away. He then attacks his neck and lunges at the other people in the same way. Once he is done ripping everyone, he notices the bloodshed in front of him and starts screaming. Later, the killing of 3 men is shown everywhere in the news, and Tsukasa also hears about it. She heads to college on a train and notices that there is a man in the crowd who is always at a distance watching her. Later at college, her friends pester her about not having a boyfriend and even offer to introduce her to a professor. One of her friends defends her that she is pure unlike them, and her male friend named Shyuda then comes to ask her for notes. Her other friends also ask her to share her notes since she makes very organized notes, and one of them raises a question to her too. The professor arrives in the class just then and the class begins. Later after class, Tsukasa discusses her future plans with her friends, and her friends think that she can apply for a PhD as well, but she doesn't want to go back to school even though she likes learning a lot. She knows that she is going with the flow without having any serious plans for the future. All of them board the train and Tsukasa feels like she is being watched once again. At the same time, the police chases after a vampire who flees a station and heads towards the Tokyo University. The vampire leaves a victim behind with bite marks on her neck and all the blood completely drained from her body. 2 policemen corner him on a street and he attacks one of them, after which he runs away to another street. He jumps over the roofs to get away from them, and his case gets assigned to the Public Security Division. Tsukasa hears about the vampire-related whispers around her as people discuss the latest vampire attacks and whether they are just rumors or not. Her friend shows her a special tabloid which shows that the victim has fang marks on her neck. One of the police groups corners the vampire and they shoot at him endlessly, so the vampire escapes by jumping on the side building. Another squad faces him in the building and a police officer named Juliana faces him. They both fight with each other and he then tries to run away by jumping on a different building. She chases after him and he jumps on the other building, so she kicks him down. She then runs into the street where he had fallen and doesn't find him anywhere, but just then he attacks her from the behind. The police discuss whether the vampire is a first-time offender and how vampires cannot stop hunting humans once they have tasted the taste of their blood. The vampire and Juliana continue to fight one another on the roof, and she asks him to let her end his miserable life since she knows that he is hurting a lot. She finally manages to land a hit on him and kicks him down on the ground. Another person watches everything fold from a distance with half a vampire eye and half a human eye. Tsukasa's friend continues to show her the vampire-related video, and Shyuda scolds her for showing Tsukasa such things. Tsukasa and Shyuda get off the train and he accompanies her to her home since it's very far from the train station. On the way she bumps into some people and gets pushed toward Shyuda. She recalls how Shyuda joined her during classes and always stayed by her side. He tells her not to worry about what he said the other day and that he knows she doesn't feel the same about him. He thinks that he won't be able to recover if she ever had a boyfriend, and Tsukasa thinks that he is joking, but he tells her that he is serious. They both pass through a crowd and Tsukasa senses that someone is watching her again in the crowd. Shyuda grabs her hand and tells her that he doesn't feel safe, so they are taking another route. He takes her to another area and comments that they should be far away. At the same time, Tsukasa realizes that she is being followed since she saw the same person in the train as well. He sees her panicking and hugs her out of nowhere. She pushes him away after a second and he then apologizes to her for acting like a simp. They are about to go when Tsukasa's stalker appears behind her and pushes Shyuda away. He nicks his thumb and extends it towards Shyuda as he asks him whether he would like to drink his blood. Shyuda's eyes turn red and he tells him in pain that he won't drink Tsukasa's blood. He tells the stalker named Yuki to leave him alone and that he won't direct his bloodlust towards Tsukasa. Yuki reminds him that he has already found an outlet for his bloodlust in the form of the 3 women that he has already murdered. Shyuda grabs his neck in protest and Yuki reveals that his semen was also found at the scenes. Shyuda becomes triggered and yells at him not to say such vulgar things in front of a woman, but Yuki argues that he has evidence in the form of a DNA match. Yuki then pushes Tsukasa away, due to which she falls down and Shyuda starts to struggle, so Yuki tells him to shut his trap in front of his girl. He punches him and tells him to hand himself in since vampires cannot stop killing once they have assaulted and murdered women, and that he would have eventually killed Tsukasa too. Shyuda starts whining that he is taking medicine and recently took a sedative to control himself too, and that he would never have exposed himself. He then starts ranting that all human lives are important, but he couldn't decide whether he should kill women for Tsukasa's sake or kill Tsukasa to save them. Shyuda lunges at her and Yuki steps in to inject him with something. Tsukasa tells him that she is sorry for not realizing anything sooner and recalls all the moments she spent with him in college, including when he confessed to her. Yuki then tranquilizes him and she struggles to stand up, so he calls the police squad and tells them that he has restrained the target. He then tells them to fetch Shyuda by themselves and carries her to her home. She guides him along the way and he drops her on her door. She thanks him for his help and he advises her to forget everything that happened, including his name. She starts crying and he consoles her that Shyuda loved her and tried his hardest to hide his identity from her. He then notices her mouth bleeding and lunges at her. He pushes her against the wall and starts kissing her after licking the blood from her mouth. He sucks the blood from her mouth and continues smooching for a good long minute. Later, Tsukasa wakes up and recalls the kissing incident, which embarrasses her. A month passes by and the students receive the news that Shyuda is studying abroad in Canada. Tsukasa notices that the news of his arrest wasn't ever published, probably because of his vampire identity, and she doesn't come across Yuki either. She recalls when Yuki kissed her the last time and then injected himself with a sedative to calm himself down. He then asked her whether he looked normal and she noticed that he looked even better than before with his dark circles gone. He apologized for using his tongue on her, which embarrassed her a lot, and she smacked his head in response. He revealed to her that he is a half-human and half-vampire, which meant that he had lesser bloodlust, and felt sorry that he was almost gonna waste away Shyuda's efforts by attacking her. He then jumped out of her terrace and left her alone after that. She keeps thinking about him due to their kiss and hopes that Shyuda is also safe wherever he is. She arrives at her home and thinks about how she has never loved anyone or kissed anyone either. She then draws the curtains and shockingly finds Yuki in her balcony, so she asks him what he is doing there. He points out that she must be worried about Shyuda since she always pauses for a minute at the place he was arrested, and that he can probably make arrangements to let her visit him. She starts feeling guilty because she was mostly thinking about clapping Yuki, and he notices that she has gotten skinnier, so he tells her that guys prefer a bit more meat on girls to tease her. She punches him in return and he smiles in response. He then gets a call from the police squad telling him about a new case in which the suspect target T is near the Makusa building, and he rushes away to capture her. He leaves behind his wallet and Tsukasa heads out to search for him to give his wallet back to him. The vampire target named Tamaru gets cornered on the roof by a police officer just when Tsukasa also arrives at the building, and the police officer tells Tamaru that the police won't charge her if she claims that she accidentally attacked someone. Yuki also arrives at the scene and Tamaru tells them that she was making dinner with her man when he accidentally cut himself and asked her to lick his blood. She then stabbed him in blind bloodlust and drank his blood. She starts ranting that a relationship between a vampire and a human can never work, and Yuki scolds her for not warning her husband about the dangers of living with a vampire. Her bloodlust fades away after his scolding, and he then arrests her while Tsukasa listens to everything from a distance. Tsukasa returns home and Yuki also arrives at her balcony after a moment. He thinks that she definitely followed him to the scene of crime and scolds her for not locking her windows despite living alone. He then notices the wallet in her hand and apologizes to her for judging her so soon. Yuki tells her that the attacker was actually his childhood friend and that they used to make snowmen together. He also consoles her that the authorities may let her visit Shyuda if they believe she can somehow reform him, and she notices that he looks really cold. She asks him whether he has a kotatsu at his home which is used to warm a person, and he comments that he only keeps necessities in his home. He then gets a call from his coworkers calling him, so he turns back to go and she calls him out. Later he meets up with his colleagues at the bar, and his colleague Juliana teases him by declaring that they are actually dating. She then discusses with them that a new clause has been added into the vampire guidelines dictating that a vampire and a human can only have relations in the presence of a doctor, but Juliana doesn't think it's a good idea since even the Tamaru couple were living together without having any intercourse. A while ago, Tsukasa had invited Yuki for a hot pot at her place, and he was about to refuse her, but noticing her upset look, he agreed to come to her house the next day after his work was over. The next day Tsukasa heads to the market to buy ingredients, but first goes to her college to return a book to her professor Okiai. She returns the book and the professor then pulls her inside his office to have tea, even though she doesn't want to go inside. Yuki's colleagues discuss in his absence that he has been lately getting personal with the latest cases, and that he was even in the same orphanage as Tamura when they were both kids. Professor Okiai gives Tsukasa tea and she wonders whether she is just feeling paranoid for no reason around him. She recalls that she didn't mind being kissed by Yuki, and Okiai then offers to give her another book which she will like. He then grabs her hands when he is giving the book to her and kisses her on the spot. She tries to withdraw and he struggles against her. He also tears her shirt open and she tries to smash her mug on his face to get away from him. At the same time, Yuki waits for Tsukasa to come to the gate of her college. Tsukasa's hand starts bleeding and Okiai tells her that she can just tell him if she doesn't want to be with him. She reminds him that he is married with kids but he doesn't care about it and then lunges at her again. He keeps trying to clap that flesh and Tsukasa kicks him away, after which she turns around to find a way to flee. She finds Yuki in front of the window and his eyes turn red on seeing her. He jumps inside and lunges on Okiai, who gets pushed back. He punches him again and again till Tsukasa stops him. He then pats her head to console her. Some people arrive at the door after hearing all the ruckus and Yuki puts his coat around her as he tells her to call the police when he is gone. Tsukasa grabs his hand to stop him from leaving and he tells her not to touch him. He then flees through the window just when the people barge inside and find Okiai beaten up. Later Yuki sedates himself again and finds her blood on his hand. He thinks that he needs to wash the blood off, but he then starts licking it wildly. 2 weeks pass by and Okiai gets a disciplinary dismal in the meanwhile. Yuki doesn't come to meet Tsukasa, but she still makes a scarf for him and leaves him on her balcony for him. One night he finds the scarf and comes inside her room to find her awake. She reveals that she has fewer nightmares when she is wearing his coat and he then hugs her tightly. He promises to get her a gift as well and suggests that they can have a hot pot whenever she wants. She asks about his work and he reveals that he has been suspended for 2 months from his work for hitting her professor. She starts apologizing to him and he hugs her in return while telling her not to worry about him. Later she meets up with a college friend who complains to her about not spending much time with her. Tsukasa reveals that she has got a brand new man in her life and that they often meet at night and eat dinner together. Her friend warns her about letting strange men into her room, but she thinks that she can fully trust Yuki. In the meanwhile, Yuki thinks about how disgusting he is, even though he likes pretending that he is a knight in shining armor in front for everyone else. He then gets a message from his colleague Yanagi telling him to come see him for his physical and to attend the office New Year's party. Later, Tsukasa does some shopping for the hot pot which she intends to have with Yuki, and she runs into a man who seems to be in a hurry. The man helps pick her stuff up and she notices that he looks placed just like Yuki. The man runs off and Yuki then catches up with her. He notices that she looks very red in face and carries her bags for her. They both head to her home and have a hot pot together. They watch the news which tells them that there is a man on the run who stabbed someone in the restaurant, after which he ran away, and Yuki comments that usually vampires stab their victims to hide traces of drinking blood, due to which the attacker may be a vampire too. He even thinks that the attacker may even be around their area based on the running speed of the vampires, and then asks her whether she knew the guy that she ran into earlier. She reveals that she didn't know him and that he seemed trustable since he helped pick up her vegetables. He scolds her for trusting everyone and she reveals that the man could have been a vampire since he had dark circles like him. He then touches her face like a proper simp boy, and just then they both hear a voice in the balcony. Yuki pushes the curtains back to reveal the same guy whom Tsukasa had run into. At the same time, the police division is at the restaurant when the manager of the restaurant Okino tells Juliana and her colleague that his employee Katajiri is a vampire, so they need to arrest him quickly. Juliana's colleague Kirio tells him that they have to find evidence first, and Okino insists that the victim had no blood left in her body, due to which Katajiri needs to be arrested quickly. Juliana notices that Okino's body also smells of blood, but Okino denies knowing anything, even though Juliana is also a vampire who can smell blood from miles away. Yuki calls his colleague Sawazaki to ask him whether there is any vampire on loose, and Sawazaki informs him that the missing vampire from the restaurant stabbing case was framed and is not the attacker. Yuki informs him that he has got the guy, and Sawazaki tells him that he is sending a car to pick him up. The vampire named Katajiri thinks that Yuki may also be a vampire, and Yuki asks him why he was running away if he wasn't the actual culprit. Katajiri explains to him that he once hit a guy in a normal fight which caused him to bleed, and he drank his blood despite hating him a lot. He then vowed never to hurt a human, and when the restaurant manager killed the girl, he wanted to drink her blood too, due to which he fled from the scene to not harm anyone. Soon police come to pick him up and the officers notice Tsukasa and Yuki together. Juliana even compares the size of her melons with Tsukasa and tells Yuki to come see her at her place whenever he can. When they leave, Tsukasa comments that Juliana was really pretty and then starts crying like a pathetic jealous loser. Yuki pulls her inside the apartment and hugs her because that's all he knows how to do. She reveals that she feels really pathetic because she is feeling jealous of Juliana, and he hugs her again. She then faints in his arms due to a fever and he drags her to the bed. They both hear some news on the TV about Yuki's hometown Hokkaido, and Tsukasa asks him to take her there one day. He promises her but suddenly checks himself and heads to another room where he gives himself a sedative. Later the police come across another case in which they find a dead body of a vampire who has been shot through his head. They all discuss at the bar that there is a killer out there who has hunted 5 vampires so far, and they wonder who it is since the identities of vampires are very secretive. Juliana asks Yuki how far he has gone with his toy girl and that he must be struggling a lot around her, due to which he should let her blow some steam. They both begin arguing and Sawazaki reminds them that they both need to be cautious since the killer can come after any one of them. Their colleague Yanagi arrives at the bar and reminds Yuki that he needs to give him a physical. He threatens him till Yuki reluctantly agrees to come meet him the next day, and Juliana suggests to him that he can even screw Tsukasa in Yanagi's presence since the law says that vampires and humans can have intercourse now in the presence of a doctor. Later Yuki heads to Tsukasa's apartment and thinks of buying her a present on the way while someone watches him from the background. Tsukasa cooks dinner for the both of them and thinks about how she doesn't know a lot of things about Yuki. He then arrives at her door, which shocks her since he always comes through a balcony. He asks after her health and then kisses her on the spot. Once he is done, he tells her that he likes her, and just then he gets shot out of nowhere. He collapses on the ground and makes Tsukasa bend low to avoid being shot. Tsukasa gets between him and the balcony, and the next shot hits the glass, which causes her to slightly bleed and fall back on him. He notices the blood on her face and it awakens his bloodlust, so he almost jumps on her. He somehow stops himself and rushes out to chase the killer. Tsukasa spots a small bag on the floor and opens it to discover a small Christmas present for her inside. Yuki finds the killer Nanako and manages to restrain her temporarily. He asks her what she wants and she calls all vampires murderers. They both struggle against one another and she reveals that her mother was killed by a vampire and that she won't let a vampire murder anyone. She then shoots his stomach at close range and he collapses on the ground. A creepy looking guy picks up Yuki and points out that he will probably die soon. He then takes out something and pours 200 milliliters of blood into his mouth to heal him. Yuki wakes up in a familiar looking long hallway and then looks at a mirror to realize that he has turned into a kid. Nanako asks the creepy guy named Lee who he is and whether he is a vampire too. Lee reveals that he bought the blood from its owners, and Nanako starts ranting that all vampires are liars since his mom's boyfriend also lied to her. He drank her blood and even clapped her, which caused her mom to die. Lee lectures her that all vampires aren't evil and that there are many factors which can cause a person to become a murderer. Yuki arrives at the end of the hallway in his dream and comes across a vampire who has been put behind jail. The vampire seems to have lost control as he begs for some blood, and then Tsukasa appears in front of him covered in some blood. Some vampires behind him rage on and ask about blood, while Yuki tells himself that he isn't like other vampires since he is a half-blood. Yuki wakes up with red eyes and jumps at Lee to attack him. The police arrive at Tsukasa's house and she tells them everything that happened. Yanagi discovers that Yuki's body temperature is rapidly rising, so he tells Sawazaki to immediately find him, and Tsukasa asks him to let her come with them. Yuki tries his best to force his way out against Lee, but Lee easily avoids all of his attacks and they both fight one another. The police take Tsukasa with her and they discuss that Yuki's temperature is rapidly rising, which means that he must have ingested a large quantity of human blood. Tsukasa tells them that he did not lick her blood, and Sawazaki explains to her that Yuki will get permanent damage or may die if his temperature doesn't stop rising. He declares that they have to quickly find him to stop him, and Sawazaki rushes towards his location. Lee casually tells Yuki to calm down, but Yuki only jumps at him in response and ends up crashing into a wall. Lee realizes that the blood must have gotten into his head now that his wounds are all healed, and they both continue playing tag. Nanako spots them fighting, so she shoots at them and Yuki diverts his attention to her. Yanagi theorizes that the killer may be identifying vampires based on their higher than average body temperatures, and that Yuki may have lost his senses because he was being patient in front of Tsukasa for so long. They discuss that they will have to use tranquilizers on Yuki to put him down since he may be a danger to everyone around him. Yuki attacks Nanako and she in return shoots him, which temporarily stops him. He lunges at her again, and this time a car crashes into him, which sends him flying. The car belongs to Nanako's comrade, and Yuki once again lunges at her, so Lee jumps in between and tells them to run away. Nanako runs back on her feet and ends up crashing into another car which belongs to Sawazaki's group. Yuki lunges at her and is about to take a juicy bite out of her, but Tsukasa yells at him not to drink her blood. Lee then pushes him away and rushes to stop him further. They both struggle against one another and Nanako's comrade shoots them with a grenade that causes a mini explosion. Yuki gets up despite the explosion and Nanako's comrade starts shooting at him, so Sawazaki yells at him to stop. He then shoots at Sawazaki and his car, which deflates the tire, and Sawazaki requests backup from the police. Another car then crashes into Nanako's comrade's car and Juliana rushes out into the street. She tells her comrades that she isn't going to let Yuki get killed and that only vampires can fight vampires. She rushes towards him and he attacks her, which sends her back. The group notices Nanako on the ground and that she doesn't seem harmed, which makes them wonder whose blood Yuki drank. Lee approaches and informs them that he made Yuki drink human blood since he was going to die otherwise. They notice that he has one red eye and Tsukasa thinks that he may be a half-blood just like Yuki, so he asks her whether Yuki is also from Hokkaido just like him. Juliana gets beaten up by Yuki and Nanako then positions herself under her comrade's car to shoot at Yuki again. Tsukasa notices her and runs towards Yuki to stop him. Yuki lunges at her and Lee jumps on top of him to stop him. The police then rush at him and injects him with a tranquilizer, which finally puts him down. Nanako and her comrade run away just when the backup police officers also arrive at the scene. Lee also flees from the scene because he doesn't want to associate with the police. 2 weeks pass by and Yuki doesn't come to meet Tsukasa. She misses him every day and goes out to visit all the places that they met one another. She visits the location where they put him down and it starts to rain there. She then comes across Lee there, who was also visiting the spot to look for a cross that he had lost. She whines to him that Yuki hasn't contacted her since the last incident and he tells her to put herself in his shoes since he must be scared of hurting her. She thinks that she doesn't know much about Yuki's life and decides to interact with Lee to find out more. She asks him to show his other eye to him, which is red in color, and he shows it to her on her request. She then whines to him again that she can start dating Yuki if she confesses her feelings to him, and he becomes excited like a little child on hearing this. Yanagi and Sawazaki visit Yuki, but he doesn't meet them and remains holed up in his room. They tell him to come to the office the next day since his suspension is ending, and Yanagi then leaves something at his door which can help ease his anxiety about attacking humans. Lee and Tsukasa take a walk and he asks her whether she isn't scared of Yuki since he tried to kill her, but she can only simp for him and nothing else. He then reveals that he drinks a little blood daily to build his tolerance and that he doesn't lose control when he sees blood this way. He offers to help find Yuki and to teach him how to tolerate his bloodlust, so Tsukasa thanks him in tears. They both then come across a live news broadcast in which a guy rushes at the reporter and stabs her. He then runs away and another vampire gets triggered on seeing all the blood, so he attacks the reporter to drink her blood. The police gang watch the news at their usual bar and see a news reporter getting attacked and a vampire attacking her soon after. Juliana loses control of her senses on watching all the blood and suddenly Yuki appears out of nowhere. He pushes her down and tells Yanagi to give her a sedative. Sawazaki notices that he is wearing a strange mask on his face and Yanagi explains that the mask blocks all odors and scents from reaching him. Yuki then notices the crowd of people panicking on TV and spots Tsukasa among them. Lee brings Tsukasa to a side and tells her that he will stop the vampire from eating out the reporter, otherwise she will die. He promises to return in 1 minute and Tsukasa wonders how a vampire can attack the reporter after the attack. She wonders whether the attack was coincidental or whether someone is pulling the strings behind the attack. Vampires all over the city start to lose their senses after watching the scene unfold, and one of them appears at the site, so Lee knocks him out easily. Another person films his movements and tells Lee to kill the monster fully, so Lee tells him to stop filming. Another vampire approaches the kid beside Tsukasa and she tries protecting the kid, due to which her own hand gets injured. She makes the kid run away and the vampire starts chasing after her. She runs into a mall and goes to the first floor, but the vampire is right behind her. Suddenly Yuki jumps inside through the windows and kicks the vampire away. He then grabs her and jumps out of the building again. They both land on the outer stairs and Yuki notices two SUS-looking figures watching everything from another building. Tsukasa thanks him for saving her and notices that he is completely ignoring her like the Chad he is. He calls Sawazaki to come pick Tsukasa up, but Sawazaki informs him that they are all occupied with the attacks. He then gives a few sedatives to Tsukasa so that she can protect herself. He notices the blood on her hands, which causes him to quickly turn around and tells her that he cannot see its color or smell it. He is about to leave by jumping off when she stops him and begs him not to disappear again. He asks her to give him a sedative quickly and she injects a sedative into his arm. He then sits on the stairs and reveals that he won't be able to move for 10 minutes. She then hugs him and even kisses his neck, since there has never been a better day for romance. She starts apologizing to him and he takes off his mask as he tells her to kiss him again. They both then hear some gunshots and Yuki receives the news that a police officer has shot a transformed vampire in panic. Another police officer arrives at the scene and calms the people down by telling them to report to them if they see an unusual person around. Lee then notices that Tsukasa is nowhere to be found, which makes him worried. Yuki thinks that they should go away since the area isn't safe, and Tsukasa mentions that Lee must be worried for her. She explains to him that she ran into Lee when she was looking for him and that he was looking for his cross when she found him. He takes off his glove and shows her his ring, which has a long black cross on it, which is the same as the black long cross on Lee's necklace. He explains that the cross is the symbol of the orphanage he grew up in called ONLO and that the orphanage takes in vampire orphans to raise them. She feels happy to learn more about him and he shares with her that he and Lee may be from the same orphanage but he doesn't recall any foreigner kid in the orphanage. She then asks him about his half-blood identity and he starts thinking whether it's even possible to be a half-blood since humans and vampires cannot have intercourse due to vampire bloodlust. Tsukasa notices that he looks upset so she pats his shoulder like a little kid and he asks her how she can tolerate him since he almost killed her the last time. She tells him that it doesn't matter if he is a half-blood or a vampire or a human and that she likes him for who he is. They hear some people approaching so Yuki jumps to the side with her and suddenly realize that the sedative's effect hasn't worn off yet. He tells her to grab the railing and then falls down. Lee appears out of nowhere and catches both of them. He pulls Yuki up and Yuki notices that one of his eyes is red so he asks him about it. The police squads take care of the situation and Sawazaki meets up with Yuki's group. Squad leader Kiryu meets up with them and Sawazaki lies to him that Lee is a passerby. Yuki then greets Kiryu and thinks that he is a familiar person so he asks Kiryu whether they have met before. Kiryu thinks that they may have met at the entrance ceremony and then walks away to do some work while Yuki thinks that his hand was very unusually warm. Yuki brings Tsukasa and Lee to their usual bar and introduces them to the bar owner Sakaki. They get led to the apartments upstairs to discuss the situation and Sakaki even suggests Tsukasa to move into Yuki's apartment but Yuki instantly rejects the idea. Tsukasa thinks about how he still doesn't know about blood tolerance and Lee informs her that blood tolerance can also extend his lifespan since vampires can only live for 39 years. They all join the police officers upstairs who are discussing that an investigation committee will be formed to deal with the latest situation. Sawazaki is about to head to the headquarters when Juliana mentions that vampires will soon be discriminated against in the police as well because they cannot be trusted. Sawazaki pinches her nose and assures everyone that Juliana and Yuki belong in the police. Juliana apologizes to him for almost attacking him and he tells her that it's not her fault. He then leaves them and Yuki takes Yanagi to a room to ask him a question while the rest of them begin making preparations to make dinner. Tsukasa notices Juliana's good looks and lets out her lazy tendencies as she compliments her looks and compares her to a Hollywood actress. In the meanwhile, Nanako chases after her comrade named Murakami who was involved in the latest incident. He reminds her that it was their leader's decision to sacrifice a few humans to bring the world's attention to the existence of vampires but she doesn't think that it's right. He then stabs her even though she was carrying no weapons and tells her that he had another mission to get rid of her. Tsukasa meets up with Yuki and tells him that Lee drinks human blood every day to build his blood tolerance and to also remain strong. She then asks him to drink her blood every day to build blood tolerance as well. Murakami meets up with Kiryu and declares that he will do anything for their mission. Kiryu then stabs him and throws him off the building to complete his mission. He then approaches Nanako who tells him that it's not right to kill humans and he asks her whether he looks like a human. The news spreads that the attacker of the news reporter was found dead nearby due to a self-inflicted injury. Meanwhile Yuki throws a tantrum as he confronts Lee and asks him why he has been giving Tsukasa wrong ideas. Lee notices that he is feeling bloodlust just after hearing her talk about it and Yuki punches him to the ground. Lee explains to him that drinking blood can heal wounds and reminds him how his own fatal wound healed after drinking blood. Yuki calls him suspicious and crazy while Lee taunts him that he can never protect anyone if he keeps getting emotional. Later, Tsukasa brings ramen to Yuki at his apartment but he doesn't open the door to her. Juliana asks Yanagi whether drinking blood can really heal their wounds and he tells her about the report that was filed related to Yuki. Tsukasa heads upstairs and finds Yuki taking off his shirt on the roof so she runs away like a little shy virgin. Nanako wakes up in the hospital and sees Kiryu who tells her that the new reporter also managed to live just like her. She asks him why he didn't kill her and he reminds her that she bit him during their last interaction which he found really beautiful so he spared her life. She threatens to tell everyone about his plans and he warns her that he will kill even more people. He then tells her that he is now going to punish her friend who told her about their plan and walks away. The investigation committee meeting gets held in which everyone gets told about the vampire transformations all around Tokyo and the vampire deaths that followed afterwards. A police officer thinks that the assault on vampires should be considered a crime and the others raise questions whether the confidentiality policies on the vampires will now change. The seniors tell the officers that they cannot mention vampires during the conferences because they don't have the authority to make the identity of the vampires public and that all the police vampires are relieved from duties for now. Yuki brings his bowl back to Sakaki and Juliana tells him that it was Tsukasa who had brought the food to him. She also asks him to carry Tsukasa to the guest room since she has fallen on the couch and tells him to take care of her. He carries her to the guest room and notices that she is out cold. He then puts her on the bed and notices hairpins on her head, so he starts to take them out. Of course he has to keep simping over her as he notices the scar on her face and vows never to hurt her again. Lee takes out his last blood vial and thinks of contacting a donor to get more blood. He thinks about how everyone is hiding the fact that Yuki's wounds healed after drinking blood and wonders how ONLO was able to perform so many experiments on drinking blood. Sawazaki researches about the effect of drinking blood and doesn't find any useful information that confirms that drinking blood heals wounds. Another officer then comes to tell him that they have an informant named Katajiri who saw that the reporter's killer Murakami was pushed off the railing by someone else. Tsukasa has a dream in which Yuki tells her not to worry about anything and she wakes up but fails to recall her dream. Sawazaki gets ready to meet up with the informant Katajiri and B Division's officers offer to accompany him. Tsukasa gets a call from her friend Miwako informing her that her pictures are all over the internet due to the incident last night and that she cannot believe that vampires actually exist. Tsukasa tells her that vampires do exist and that they lose control when they see blood, so they live their life trying to avoid blood. Miwako recalls that Tsukasa once told her that Crush can jump really high and suspects that her crush is also a vampire, so Tsukasa assures her that she can trust her crush and that he won't harm her. Miwako continues to worry and fuss over her, so Tsukasa tells her that she really likes the guy. Katajiri gets attacked by a guy at his workplace and just then the police arrive at his place. They spot the attacker chasing after Katajiri, so Sawazaki runs after them. Tsukasa gets a message from Miwako apologizing for acting so cringe, and she then overhears a voice outside. Lee and Yuki hear the same voice outside and they all look outside to see Katajiri hiding in a balcony of a nearby building. Yuki calls Sawazaki to inform him about Katajiri and Sawazaki asks him to take care of him since he is their informant. He is about to head out when Lee pops out and tells Yuki that he saw Katajiri's attacker at the plaza the other night filming all the attacks. Yuki tells Tsukasa to lock her window and hide, and he and Lee then head out to save Katajiri. The others get informed about Yuki's adventure and Yanagi opens up an application from ONLO to monitor Yuki's temperature and heartbeat. Juliana points out that he never monitors her and he explains to her that ONLO has asked him to monitor Yuki closely. The attacker corners Katajiri in an abandoned building and Lee then attacks him from behind. He gets blood on his head which starts to make Yuki feel all twitchy, so Lee jokes around with him till he stops thinking about the blood. Their enemy attacks Lee from behind again and manages to break Yuki's goggles, but Yuki pushes him down and restrains him with Lee's help. Sawazaki arrives at the building and meets up with Katajiri. He then tells Yuki to keep Katajiri at Sakiki's building because only very few people at the police division knew about Katajiri's tip in the first place, which indicates that there is a mole. An old man watches everything from a distance and observes that the Child of Light and the Child of Darkness are both together looking at Lee and Yuki. The group brings Katajiri back to the bar where Tsukasa and Yanagi meet up with them, and Katajiri tells them that he saw Murakami being pushed off the railing by someone at the night of the news reporter incident. He reveals that Murakami was calling someone a traitor as he fell. The others notice scratches on Katajiri's arm which indicate that he must have been harming himself, and he explains that he did it to curb his bloodlust after seeing blood. Yuki heads to his room to avoid being seen by people since his eyes are still a bit red. Yanagi decides that Katajiri is very injured and should be taken to a hospital. Meanwhile, Sawazaki calls his comrade Makamura to check up on him, and Murakami informs him that everything is okay on his end. He doesn't tell him that he killed everyone at the bar where Katajiri was working, and he then calls his comrade who was giving him all the information to scold him that all the bartenders were not vampires but one of them was a human as well. He shuts the call, and just then Nanako's friend named Kenichi, who was captured by the group, smacks Makamura from the behind. The group all bring Katajiri to the hospital, and Tsukasa notices that someone is sneaking out of the hospital by climbing down the window. The person turns out to be Nanako, who jumps on the ground and takes hold of Tsukasa. She then threatens everyone to give her a car or else she will break Tsukasa's neck. A Dr. Kano comes to meet Yuki at the bar and tells him that he is from ONLO and that Yanagi called him to give him some counseling. Nanako takes Tsukasa in the car with her, and Tsukasa recalls that Nanako promised not to hurt her by whispering in her ear when she was threatening everyone. Tsukasa asks Nanako why she is being nice to her, and Nanako explains to her that she only kills vampires but doesn't go after humans. Nanako thinks that she cannot understand her and tries explaining to her that all vampires are devils who are evil inside, so Tsukasa tells her that she knows everything about vampires since her lover boy is also a vampire. Dr. Kano tells Yuki that a lot of vampires get inferiority complex and start hating everything around them, which makes Yuki think that he is talking about him. Kano asks him about his girlfriend and advises him not to be too overprotective over her. Juliana and Lee join them in the room, and Lee recognizes the doctor since once upon a time Kano told him to jerk off whenever he is feeling bloodlust. Dr. Kano observes that Lee must have run away from ONLO and that ONLO must be going nuts over him. He tells Yuki that Lee is the best example for him since Lee isn't afraid of the devil inside him and has learned how to control his devil. Nanako stops somewhere and tells Tsukasa that they have to ditch the car since it may be getting tracked. Tsukasa notices that she is still very injured and advises her to consult a doctor, but Nanako informs her that she will look for her friend who has gotten into trouble because of her. Tsukasa wonders if the police can help her out and Nanako reveals that the police were never helpful to her. She then sees her friend Kenichi in the alley and runs to hug him. Kano tells Yuki that he can train to control his bloodlust, but he needs Tsukasa's help to do that. They all then hear through the police transmitter that Nanako has escaped in a vehicle with a hostage, and Yuki realizes that Tsukasa may be the hostage based on the hostage description. Kenichi brings Nanako to a hotel and Tsukasa ends up coming with them. Nanako asks her how she can even like a person who is a vampire, and Tsukasa explains to her that devils and humans are essentially the same other than the bloodlust which the vampires face. Kenichi learns that their abandoned car has been discovered and that two of their comrades may be on the move to hunt for them, but since they are in the police, it will take them some time to discover their location. Sawazaki arrives at Katajiri's bar only to discover that everyone there has been butchered and that his own colleague Makamura is missing. He tells Yuki about the situation and Yuki wonders whether Makamura is the mole. Kiryu issues orders to his minions to find out Nanako's location by checking the footage around the area or making inquiries to the nearby taxi drivers. Tsukasa questions Nanako whether there are more moles in the police division, and Nanako thinks that it's not her business, so Tsukasa informs her that her lover boy is also a police officer. Nanako then advises her to leave the matter alone and that they are all armed and trained people who can handle such conflict, but she should stay out of their matter. Yuki has a rare brainstorming moment in which he wonders how he can let Tsukasa help train his bloodlust when he wants to keep distance from her in order to protect her. Lee offers to accompany him to rescue her, and Yuki thinks that he cannot trust him, but he still asks him to control him if he ever loses control. Lee scolds him for acting like an almighty cringe loser and wonders whether he should take Tsukasa off from his hands. Nanako's group gets ready to depart and she warns Tsukasa to be cautious around an officer named Ushio who has a scar on his face. The both of them tie her up and Nanako tells her to be careful. After some time, when police arrive at her door, they find Tsukasa tied up and she notices the scar-faced Ushio among them, which makes her nervous. Ushio then accompanies her downstairs while Nanako and Kenichi try to find a way to flee from the hotel. Ushio asks her in the elevator what she heard from the kidnappers and she pretends to not know anything, so he questions whether they told her that he is a spy. The elevator stops at another floor and several people come inside, so Tsukasa takes the chance to use a stun gun on Ushio. She then rushes out of the elevator and uses another elevator to escape him quickly. She thinks about calling any of her friends but realizes that she doesn't have anyone's number, so she decides to search Sakaki's car's number on the internet. Nanako and Kenichi take refuge at the roof to get away from the police, and they notice someone on the other roof who shoots at them. Nanako gets slightly wounded, but she and Kenichi hide themselves behind a wall and he tells her that he will always be at her side. Yuki is getting triggered over Lee's words when Juliana comes to tell them that Tsukasa is on the call. Yuki then talks with her on the phone and she informs him about her location, including the fact that Ushio is chasing after her since he is a spy. She heads into one of the rooms and Yuki and Lee storm off to find her. Ushio kicks his way into her room and tells her to come to him without making any ruckus. She asks him whether he hates vampires and he explains that he only pities them because they have to look away or control themselves in the presence of blood around them. He wants to free them from their suffering, and Tsukasa argues with him that he should try to find a way to coexist with vampires if really pities them. He gets sick of her lecturing, and just then Yuki and Lee arrive at the nearby building. Ushio shoots at the window behind her, which causes her to fall down the building, but Yuki jumps in time and catches her. He transforms fully into a psycho vampire and Lee jumps towards him to get Tsukasa from him. Yuki dodges him and Tsukasa comes back to her senses as she realizes that she isn't dead. She takes out the stun gun from her pocket, which had blocked Ushio's bullet, and notices that Yuki is crying above her. Suddenly Makamura snipes at them from another building, but the bullet doesn't hit them and Nanako in return shoots at Makamura from their building. She discusses with Kenichi that it was her first time shooting at a human and that it didn't feel much different than shooting at a vampire. Tsukasa injects Yuki with a sedative and Lee goes off to play with a bunch of kids. Yuki tells her that he met with a Dr. Kano who advised him to learn about his triggers, which are behind his transformations, and that he wants to keep a distance from her in order to protect her. She tells him that he saved her in the college as from Ushio even though she might have bleeding, and he thinks that he would have bit her in the worst case scenario. She assures him that Lee would have pulled him off if he had lost control and that she won't die just from being bit once or twice. He realizes that he really likes her sincerity and then asks her whether she finds his face disgusting. Tsukasa thinks that someone called him disgusting, so she starts assuring him that he looks fine, and he reveals that he called himself disgusting because he doesn't like himself. He then tells her how Dr. Kano told him that he can control the vampire inside him by controlling his bloodlust, and she thinks that he should take the chance so that they can be together. Lee finishes up playing with the kids while Tsukasa asks Yuki the most cringe question of her life, whether they are a couple or not. He starts laughing at her and then asks her whether she would like to be in a relationship with him. She reveals that she does, and he then kisses her in return. Lee calls him a pervert when he is done smooching her, and Tsukasa backs in embarrassment. Sawazaki informs Katajiri that 2 of his colleagues are dead, and Kiryu also learns about this fact. Ushio then calls to inform Kiryu that Nanako and Kenichi escaped the building by dressing up in the workers' outfits, and that Tsukasa was also rescued by police officer Yuki. He informs him that Makamura's blood was found at a building, due to which his identity as a spy has been discovered, but nobody has mentioned Ushio's identity. Kiryu orders Ushio to look into the hostage, and Ushio tells him that he has a hunch that Tsukasa and Yuki are lovers. Kiryu thinks about how Yuki has fallen in love with a human just like his father, and that they both look similar to each other. He wonders what will happen to Yuki in the future, considering Yuki's father was a mass murderer. Tsukasa packs her stuff up to move to Sakaki's building, and she tells Yuki that they can see each other more often since they will be staying at the same building. Sawazaki notices that there is a guy lurking close to Sakaki's building, and he wonders what his purpose is. He discusses with Yanagi that the guy may be after Tsukasa since her face appeared in the TV broadcast during the last incident too. Yanagi and Kano discuss that there is an emerging group called CCC which aims to wipe off all the vampires, and that it's too soon for a group to be formed after the incident. Yuki and Tsukasa arrive at the place, and Kano gets ready to train Yuki to control his bloodlust. He takes them to a room and tells them that he and Yanagi will be supervising them in a separate room. He gives some equipment to Tsukasa which can be used to control and restrain vampires, and tells the couple to make out so that Yuki can transform into a vampire. He explains that he needs to transform in order to learn the timing of his transformation, after which he will start learning how to control his transformation. He then explains that they will be monitoring his temperature from the other room, and if it rises above a certain level, they will ask through the audio feed whether anyone is hurt. If they don't get an answer, then they will open up the video feed to confirm whether everyone is alright or not. Once the doctors are gone, Tsukasa wonders whether the doctors really won't be spying on them, and they both then look over the equipment which the doctors have given them. Yuki firstly puts on nail clippers which control his nails from jumping out, and also puts on a pair of handcuffs which restrain the movement of his hands. He then pulls open his shirt to reveal that his gunshot wound is already healed, and she starts acting like the queen of embarrassment. He then lets her touch his healed wound and even comments that she smells good. He slides off his shirt over his shoulder to give her better access, and she probes his wounds while the doctors notice in the other room that his temperature is rising. He then hugs her and she continues to stroke his chest, so he starts stroking her back as well. He asks her to continue touching him as his eyes turn red, and the doctors notice that his temperature has exceeded the transformation threshold. They ask them through the audio feed whether they are both alright, and Tsukasa answers that they are okay while Yuki just pushes her down and starts kissing her. They continue to make out, and Tsukasa thinks that the doctor may open up the video feed since Yuki didn't give them an answer. Kano asks him again whether he is alright, and he then withdraws back to answer that he is okay. He then sits back, and the doctors announce that they will open the video in 1 minute just to confirm things. Yuki apologizes to her for not stopping sooner, and the video opens up in 1 minute. The doctors are about to ask them different questions, but Yuki tells them that he needs a minute and heads out to get fresh air. He then thinks about clapping her and starts pleasuring himself. Sawazaki tells the upper dogs in police that the Squad F of the police division led by Sawazaki needs a new leader because Sawazaki has a habit of letting his subordinates slack off. A car drives Officer Midori Anze to Tokyo, and she tells her subordinates to not refer to her by her family name Anze, which is the same as Yuki's family name. Several protests take place in Tokyo to exterminate vampires. At the same time, there is a high-level conference for the protection of the rights of the vampires, and Dr. Kano attends it since he has been invited as well. He brings Tsukasa and Yuki with him and tells them to eat free food at the restaurant on his behalf. He then heads inside and meets up with Officer Midori Anze. They both discuss Onlo's condition, and Kano tells her that she might run into a handsome stranger who gave him a ride to the conference. Yuki and Tsukasa walk around the building, and she heads to the restroom. Midori then notices Yuki and finds his face familiar, so she chit-chats with him for a minute. He reveals that he is actually someone's chauffeur and is not a part of the conference, which shocks her a lot. When Tsukasa comes out, she tells Yuki to take care of her and then walks away. She then heads into the restroom to cry her heart out and wishes that Yuki's father Tamaki would have been able to see him. Later she gives a lecture in the conference in which she tells the authorities to hold off on passing the law which allows vampires to have intercourse with humans in the presence of a doctor. She thinks that such kind of law will be used to eliminate the vampires instead and that the people should wait for ONLO to come with restraining devices which can help in the intercourse. She then heads back to the ONLO research facility quickly after the conference and tells Tamaki about Yuki. Tamaki, who is fully restrained in the lab, wishes that he could hug both her and Yuki, and she hopes that one day he will be able to fulfill his wishes. A police officer named Asami informs Sawazaki that Squad F will now be led by another officer named Ishimaru and that Kiryu has been requesting the change for some time, due to which he is suspicious of his intentions. Ishimaru comes to meet them at the graveyard and orders Sawazaki to introduce him to all of his subordinates. Tsukasa makes coffee for Yuki and they both discuss that Sakaki is finding a new base of operations for them. Yanagi then interrupts their cringe romance and informs them that Sawazaki wants to introduce all of them to the new boss. Yuki starts blaming himself for disobeying the standby orders, due to which their boss has been changed, and Tsukasa starts feeling guilty as well, so he hugs her to stop making her worry. Yuki then gets introduced to their new squad leader Ishimaru and new team member Asami. Ishimaru recognizes all of them and Sawazaki then tells Yuki and Juliana that they cannot go out in public without a human chaperone according to new regulations. He then asks Yuki and Tsukasa to tell him what happened at the hotel, and they both wonder whether they should tell him about Ushio since he could be a spy too. Asami thinks the same and he tells Asami to do a background check on him which will satisfy his curiosity. He also tells him to do a background check on Kiryu since it was him who wanted to remove Sawazaki from the leadership. The group becomes busy in doing background checks and Tsukasa then takes Yuki to a side where she shows him a piece of paper that Kenichi gave to her which gives her directions on how to contact him. She tells him that Nanako and Kenichi have left the CCC organization and that maybe they can use them to get more information without arresting them. Ishimaru overhears everything and suggests contacting Nanako to convince her to come to them. Later they all discuss that the Ikebukuro incident with the news reporter was caused by the CCC organization to terminate all the vampires and whether they should report Ushio's identity to their superiors. They discuss that maybe Kiryu is behind Ushio's movements and that it's better to keep an eye on him than expose his identity. Ishimaru then decides to contact Nanako and Kenichi to get more information from them and asks Tsukasa to help them out. Yuki protests that Tsukasa has already been in danger many times and Ishimaru allows him to stay by her side to protect her. Soon Tsukasa gets in touch with Nanako and Kenichi through a website and they agree to help her out when she assures them that CCC can be captured without putting their lives in danger. One day, Lee tells Yuki that he has to go out to buy some necessities and Yuki makes him exchange his number with him. Tsukasa asks him to exchange numbers with her as well and Yuki starts protesting, which makes Lee think that he is still being too overprotective around her. Lee visits a girl named Feng who gives him some blood vials and he thinks that she has extracted too much blood even though she is a doctor. He makes her rest on her couch and informs her that he has a new friend who is a half-blood like him. He recalls how he always wanted to see the sky when he was kept in ONLO lab and experimented on like a dog. They kept experimenting on him day after day, so he decided to escape from them, and a lady researcher told him before escaping that ONLO will never let him leave if he ever returns. He tells his friend Feng that he hasn't found a family yet and she advises him to think better of his new friends. He then returns to Sakaki's building where Yuki and Tsukasa greet him on returning. Later the police meet up with Nanako and Kenichi and Ishimaru tells them that he will provide an apartment to them and fund their living expenses, but he wants all information on CCC in exchange. Nanako in return asks him to give her information about a vampire named Morisawa who died 15 years ago. The police start to dig up information on the vampire named Morisawa and learn that information related to him is sealed because he was either a Class 1 class or was involved in a police scandal. They learn that Morisawa and Nanako's mother named Sayuri were both in the police division and started dating. Morisawa would often visit Sayuri's home and play with her daughter as well. One day he hugged Nanako and Sayuri shot him when she saw him hugging her, probably because he was transforming. The bullet missed the mark and he then shot Sayuri next, which killed her. He then assaulted Sayuri's body in front of her daughter and Nanako accidentally shot him, which killed him. The police discuss that Morisawa was a very kind and nice guy who never had any problem before, and Yuki thinks about how hard it must have been to kill a loved one. Later Nanako was often visited by the East Bay University professor Chizu, who would take her to a lot of his classes, and she interacted with a number of students there. A lot of people would justify in those classes that killing vampires is just, and soon there was a guy who started convincing Nanako that it was just to kill all the vampires whose name was Kiryu. In the present, Kenichi and Nanako discuss whether they should help out the police or not, and Kenichi wonders whether Nanako likes Kiryu. She calls Kiryu a monster and walks away in disgust, but then starts thinking about how close she and Kiryu used to be. She tells herself that she started to love Kiryu in the past only to forget about her fear towards Morisawa. Soon the police provide her all the information on Morisawa and she tells them that she already knew everything about him. She agrees to help them out and declares that she wants to stop Kiryu as well, which confirms their suspicions that Kiryu is a mole in the police department. Suddenly they hear groups of people protesting against the vampires all around them and Sawazaki calls to inform them that such protesters are swarming the streets. Some of those protesters corner Juliana and show her a bag of blood, which makes her retreat from the scene. Asami and Yuki decide to meet up with Sawazaki and Juliana to help them out, and Ishimaru warns Yuki not to get involved in any serious matters. They both arrive at the scene and Yuki spots some protesters chasing after a woman with a baby. He decides to rescue her and runs after the protesters into the train station. He stops the protesters and runs after the woman into a train where he injects her with a sedative to calm her. Suddenly he gets surrounded by some vigilantes and Tsukasa's Professor Okiai steps forward to tell him that he was looking for him. He tells Yuki that his life was destroyed after he invaded his office since his wife left him, the university fired him and someone leaked all his personal information on the internet. He then declares that they are both alike and reminds him that he transformed into a vampire at his office after seeing Tsukasa all flustered because he was turned on just like him. Yuki punches him in anger, which causes his nose to start bleeding and his eyes turn red on seeing the blood. Okiai starts taunting him that his nosebleed must have turned him on as well, and Yuki starts to recall the moments when he transformed in the past. He realizes that his mind is pretty stable even though his eyes are red, and seeing his calm state, Okiai tells his colleague to wait for him in the next car. He throws a bag of blood on his face and follows it by throwing more blood on him. Yuki starts to close control of his senses even though he had it under control despite seeing his nosebleed, and Okiai then asks him whether he screwed Tsukasa and sucked her blood. Yuki lunges at him and Okiai retreats into the other train car with his colleague. Yuki keeps banging on the door like a maniac and his video becomes viral on social media. Everyone learns that there is a vampire on loose in the train, and when the train stops at the next station, there is a whole group of officers waiting for him. Ishimaru runs inside and Yuki jumps on him, but Ishimaru easily puts him down and then knocks him out. Later the group learns that Okiai carried out the whole plan in order to tarnish the reputation of the vampires, and more anti-vampire groups emerge to protest against the existence of the vampires. Sawazaki gets called to the headquarters and gets told that he will be punished along with his subordinate soon. Soon Ishimaru calls Yuki to a place and discusses with him that they lied to the management that he wasn't actively deployed on any task but just happened to be at the train due to a coincidence. He declares that he will be handed the worst punishment and feels relieved that at least he did not physically harm anyone. He then points out in his video that he remained calm and collected for the most part and decides to test out his skills by fighting him head-on. Ishimaru punches him, but Yuki doesn't fight back because he thinks that he won't be able to control himself if he loses his senses. Ishimaru brings out a blade and motivates him to lose control to test out his skills. Tsukasa goes to the bar to ask the officers where Yuki is, and they tell her that Yuki has gone out with Ishimaru. On the other side, Ishimaru cuts his thumb, which makes it bleed and it turns Yuki's eyes red, but he remains in control. Yuki then punches him and they both fight one another for a moment. Ishimaru points out that he is fully in control and is thinking rationally, which is also strengthening his physical abilities. He then thinks that he should drink human blood next to check his control over his transformation and pushes him down on the ground to force him. He drops a drop of blood from his thumb in his mouth, and just then Sawazaki arrives at the warehouse with Tsukasa. Sawazaki pushes Ishimaru aside and is about to give Yuki a sedative, but Ishimaru declares that it won't be necessary since Yuki is fully in control. Ishimaru explains to everyone that he has researched a lot on vampires since his childhood friend was also a vampire, and Tsukasa then hugs Yuki. Sawazaki thinks that he should not have forced Yuki to transform and makes Ishimaru apologize to him. Later they meet up with Nanako and Kenichi tries to hack into CCC's main computer to get details about all their members. He fails to hack into their computer and thinks that maybe the main computer is disconnected from the internet in order to prevent any hacking incidents. Ishimaru then makes him provide a list of all the members that he knows about, and they learn that Kiryu is one of the big bosses of CCC, but there is one person above Kiryu who is the main investor and whose identity is unknown. They discuss that they need to somehow get the data from CCC's hideout and that they cannot involve any other squad. Nanako then discusses Yuki's wound with him when she shot him through the chest, and Ishimaru comments that no one told him about the chest injury. Kano arrives and insists that they shouldn't talk about Yuki's injury. He reveals that there was once a detective who learned that vampires could heal their wounds by drinking blood, and that the detective was then transferred and demoted since he wasn't supposed to learn such top secret information. Lee wonders whether it's such a top secret because the humans fear that the vampires will attack them whenever they get injured, and Ishimaru declares that the information won't ever leave the group. Yuki takes Kano to a side and Kano gives him some new equipment to try on. Yuki tells him that he sees some flashbacks from his past whenever he transforms, and in his flashbacks, he is trapped in the basement with some vampires, and Kiryu is telling him that he is just like all the vampires. Kano advises him not to think too much about his memories because there must be a reason that he blocked out all such memories. Later he keeps thinking how Kiryu is connected to his memories, and Tsukasa comes into the lounge to make tea. She makes tea for the both of them and he apologizes to her for scaring her at the warehouse with Ishimaru. She admits to him that she feels jealous because she cannot give her blood to help him out, and he tells her about how he can control himself whenever he sees blood. She approaches him and promises to never give blood to him. He hugs her and is about to smooch her next when Sawazaki calls to inform him that a fire has broken out at a person's house who was a huge supporter of vampire rights. They head to the site to watch the fire, and Yuki comes across Kiryu at the site. He confronts him and recalls that Kiryu told him that he was looking into Tamaki Anze's case the last time they met one another. Yuki asks him who Tamaki Anze is, and Kiryu wonders why he has lost all his memories. He tells Yuki that he doesn't have any right to question him when he cannot even remember his own memories, and then walks away from him. Later Kiryu gets a call from his friend Ishimaru, who reports the latest situation to him. The whole group makes plans to break into CCC's hideout to retrieve their data. They allow Nanako and Kenichi to join them as lookouts, and Sawazaki forbids Yuki and Juliana from coming with them. He warns them that they will be fired if they disobey his orders, and Ishimaru agrees with him. They all then eat rice balls together, and Asami keeps thinking that Ishimaru is somehow suspicious because he told everyone to look into his background. Tsukasa gives a utility belt to Yuki which she made for him so that he can carry his equipment easily. She also thanks him for everything that he did for her and feels glad that they met each other. He feels the same about her and thanks her for the gift. Yuki then insists to Sawazaki that he wants to come with the team, and Sawazaki doesn't agree to his request, but Ishimaru allows him to come with them and tells him to stand on the lookout duty. Yuki then gives his scarf to Tsukasa and tells Lee to take care of her. The mission to break into CCC's hideout begins, and Yanagi decides to stay near the hideout in case someone needs a doctor. Tsukasa asks him to take her with him, and Lee also decides to join the both of them. The main group heads inside the hideout building and hears some strange voices. They then spot a guy fleeing from the window who jumps into the river, and Nanako tells them that she cannot locate him because the river is in her blind spot. The group discovers that the guy killed someone in the hideout before fleeing, and that the killed person seems to be a homeless guy based on his appearance. They discover one more body, and the group proceeds ahead into the hideout while Sawazaki wonders why they have found 2 bodies only when they heard 3 gunshots earlier. Suddenly a vampire appears from one of the rooms and lunges at Sawazaki. Yuki hears everything and thinks that he will be fired if he intervenes, but he still runs towards the hideout. Sawazaki manages to fend himself against the vampire and then spots another vampire behind Ishimaru. He kicks him off and more vampires appear out of the other rooms. Sawazaki reports to everyone that they are being attacked by 5 vampires and that 2 of the bodies belong to the vampires while one of the bodies belongs to the humans. He concludes that the 5 vampires probably ganged up on a human and killed him, so Yuki decides not to look at the vampire when he will come to help them. Sawazaki reminds him that he can get fired if anyone learns about his deployment, but Yuki doesn't care about it and rushes to join them. Sawazaki and Ishimaru split up to divert the vampires, but all the vampires rush after Sawazaki since he is bleeding. Ishimaru then cuts his own arm to make it bleed and then shows the vampires the blood to get their attention. Kenichi struggles to break into the main computer, and Asami, who is guarding him, then gets a message from his friend. Ishimaru shoots at one of the vampires' heads and struggles against the remaining 2 vampires. He takes down another one, and a 3rd vampire attacks his arm. Yuki barges inside the building just then and tears the vampire away from him. He notices the blood on Ishimaru's arm as Ishimaru tells him that 2 vampires are going after Sawazaki on the other floor. Sawazaki fails to take down the vampires and they both attack him. Yuki notices him struggling against the vampires, so he jumps in to help him and tears one vampire away from him, then kills both of them by choking them with his bare hands. He then walks away from Sawazaki to control his senses, and Sawazaki tells him that he would have died without his help. Asami confronts Ishimaru and tells him that he has friends in Ishimaru's old squad who told him that Ishimaru was in their squad for only a year, even though his records show that he was with them for 5 years, which means that his records have been tampered somehow. All the police officers receive a dispatch message that there are some armed officers hunting down vampires in the Kano building, and that all the officers should head to the building to apprehend everyone inside the building. Sawazaki immediately orders Yanagi to flee the scene, realizing that they have all been trapped somehow. Kiryu repeats his master plan that all the officers inside the Kano building including the vampires will be framed and suspended from the case. Asami thinks that Ishimaru was behind their plan all along and Ishimaru admits that he is a part of CCC but he never reported about their raid to Kiryu. He explains to Asami that he was working as a double agent on behalf of the police and that his movements must have been tracked due to which Kiryu trapped him in the building. He then reveals that there was another double agent working with him who was actually Makamura. At the same time, Makamura confronts Kiryu and declares that he is handing him over to HQ. Asami argues with Ishimaru that Makamura couldn't have been a double agent since he killed 2 people at Katajiri's bar and Ishimaru explains to him that Makamura shot at the manager in self-defense while the other employee who was a vampire killed herself because she was losing control of her senses. Kiryu raises his hand in defeat and just then someone snipes at Makamura which kills him on the spot. Yuki watches from the roof that a number of squad cars as well as media channels are surrounding the Kano building and Ishimaru tells Asami that they wanted to get hands on the list because it had financial information about CCC which would reveal who is actually behind the organization. Kiryu realizes that Makamura had called all the media around the Kano building to divert their attention to CCC so that they can investigate who is behind the organization. He even makes some guesses in front of Kiryu but Kiryu just kicks him some more and starts lecturing him uselessly about vampires. The news about vampires losing control starts spreading on the internet once again and people start to turn against vampires just like before. Kiryu gets his hands on a sniper and shoots at Yuki who is some buildings away from him. Makamura lunges at him and manages to disarm him while Yuki collapses on the roof. The police surround Sawazaki and the others while Tsukasa makes a decision and tells Lee to take her to Yuki's side. The most useless lookout person Nanako realizes that Yuki has been shot and tries to see who shot him. She then spots Makamura being shot by another sniper which causes him to fall off the roof. She then zooms in on him to shoot him and he looks right back at her. He tells her that she cannot shoot him and walks away from the scene. Lee carries Tsukasa on his back and jumps on the roofs till they reach the Kano building where Yuki is lying. Sawazaki's squad puts down their weapons and they learn that Tsukasa is on the roof. The police try to go to the roof and Sawazaki stops them from invading the privacy of the cringe couple. Lee tells Tsukasa that Yuki needs about 400 cubic centimeters of blood and she breaks a glass with his help to draw blood from her body. Sawazaki hears their conversation from the radio and offers to give his blood too since he believes Tsukasa cannot give 400 c of blood based on her small frame. Tsukasa tells him to stop the riot police from entering the roof and then recalls that she told Yuki that she won't make him drink her blood. She cuts her arm and the blood drops start to fall into Yuki's mouth. Tsukasa realizes that the blood isn't falling in speed into his mouth so she forces her arm into his mouth and asks him to bite down. He doesn't give any response in return so she kisses him to wake his bloodlust. Yuki suddenly wakes up and starts biting her arm so Lee tells her to force her arm down into his mouth or else he will completely bite her arm off. The police surround them and warn them not to move so Lee tells them not to interrupt them since they are almost finished. Yuki continues to drink her blood and he has a dream in which he is kissing Tsukasa. She then draws back and tells him that she will be fine so he shouldn't die. Yuki's wound starts to close and Lee tells the police to find a tranquilizer in Yuki's pouch to inject him with. The police officers hesitate but one of them ends up listening to him and finds a tranquilizer in Yuki's pouch. Yuki's wound closes up and Lee tells the officer to inject him quickly. He injects him with the tranquilizer which calms him down and the officer tells Lee that there is an ambulance with them. Lee tells the police not to kill Yuki and then carries Tsukasa in his arms. He arrives at the edge of the roof and everyone on the ground notices him so he tells them not to shoot at him since he is carrying an injured person. He drops to the ground and hands her over to a nurse so that they can give first aid to her. The whole Tokyo watches everything on their TV and the police then tell Lee to raise his hands after noticing his red eye. They tell him that they are going to arrest him so he tells them that they are pointing their gun at the wrong guy and then flees from the scene. Ishimaru's squad gets taken to another location and Makamura manages to communicate with Ishimaru through a private radio channel. He tells him to reroute his investigation since some government departments may be behind CCC and to not let CCC's old members get killed. Yuki has a dream in which he is stuck on the tree when Kiryu comes to meet him and makes him jump into his arms. He then takes him inside a facility and reveals that he is looking for a serial killer Tamaki Anze who is also his janitor. He explains that Tamaki was sentenced to death but for some reason he was released from jail and brought to the research facility instead. Yuki finds himself surrounded by a number of transformed vampires who are all restrained and Kiryu carries him further even though he protests that he doesn't want to be here. He then shows him Tamaki Anze who is acting like a psycho-lunatic and reveals that Tamaki is his father. Yuki wakes up in a hospital room where a doctor phone asks him to lie down since he has lost a lot of blood. She explains that he is in the hospital's basement ward, which is used to treat vampires, and that Tsukasa is also admitted on the 3rd floor with a broken arm, but otherwise she is fine. He starts feeling guilty at drinking her blood, and Fong tells him that he would have died if Tsukasa hadn't stepped in to offer her blood. At the police HQ, the police chief tells Ishimaru and Sawazaki that someone attacked Ushio recently and that another CCC member Murakami was also killed in the prison after he was visited by Kiryu a day before. Ishimaru requests him to deal with Kiryu at least, and he answers the both of them that it's possible that some government agencies may be behind CCC, which means that they won't get anything by just restraining Kiryu. He then announces that Sawazaki's squad is dissolved, and Sawazaki requests him to reconsider Yuki's punishment once more. After they leave his office, they meet Asami and they tell him that they are all suspended for 3 weeks, plus they will all now be moved to different divisions. Kiryu gets the karma of his life when he opens his car door and the car explodes in his face. Yuki wakes up and finds her friend Miwako sitting beside her. They both discuss how there are both good and bad vampires out there. Later, Ishimaru pays her a visit and tells her that Yuki will resign from the police and will be put under strict surveillance. He reveals that a bill is going to be submitted to the Diet which will place even more restrictions on vampires now. Dr. Kano and Sawazaki tell Yuki about the punishments the squad will face, and he thinks that it's a good idea to separate him from Tsukasa since he doesn't trust himself enough. Sawazaki advises him to talk with Tsukasa once before they are both separated the next day, but he doesn't know what they should talk about. He also tells the doctor about the flashback that he had in which he learnt that Tamaki Anze was his father. Dr. Kano tells him that Tamaki Anze had a human girlfriend before he met Yuki's mother, and that the girlfriend was killed by a bunch of humans, so Tamaki killed all of them to take her revenge. He then lost control after drinking their blood and killed 10 more innocent people. He was then brought to ONLO in the form of a living corpse, and his mother still ended up falling in love with Tamaki despite knowing everything about him. Later, Yuki and Tsukasa meet each other in the hospital, and he rants to her that he was going to confront the devil inside himself, but now he is out of time. She tells him that she will wait for him, and they both then confess their feelings to one another. They both head into different directions, and Tsukasa starts to cry at their farewell. Later, after many years, Tsukasa is compiling her research paper and Yuki walks up to her. She compliments his new hairstyle and he compliments her looks like a proper simp boy. That's all for today, my fellow men of culture. If you liked the video, make sure to subscribe the channel for more anime recaps.